Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about how to optimize your cloud computing strategy and what it means for the year 2023 to be the year of cloud value. To discuss that, I'm joined by Karthik Narain, lead Accenture Cloud First. Hello to you, Karthik.
Great to be here, James.
Also with me is Ashley Skirm, Global Cloud First Strategy and Consulting Lead at Accenture, Senior Managing Director. Ashley, happy Friday to you.
Hi, James. Good to be here.
So I think it's interesting in that companies have been deploying cloud for at least 10 years, probably longer. And it seems like cloud is only getting more complicated. It's more important, but it's more complicated. We've got AI now and edge computing and cloud native and Kubernetes and multi-cloud. And I think a lot of companies are really flummoxed in terms of what to do with their cloud deployment. So Accenture has named 2023 the year of cloud value. What does this mean for enterprise managers who want to keep pace with cloud's performance? Karthik, what's your view on this?
That's a great question, James, and you're absolutely right. Cloud is not a brand new technology. It's been in place, and like you said, there's been varied degrees of adoption of cloud for the last 10 years or even more. But I think the last 2 years have been particularly interesting because a lot of organizations have embarked upon big transformations at dramatically compressed timeframes. And this has resulted in a kind of a surge in cloud because organizations were under pressure to survive. And certain organizations wanted to take the opportunity to thrive because of all the changes that was going on in the environment. And cloud kind of became the answer. And the inflection point of this was the COVID-19 pandemic, where the pandemic brought three distinct challenges. The first one was the cost structure came under question for enterprises, where they wanted to make sure that the cost is in alignment with their revenue because there was changes in revenue forecasts and so on and so forth. The second thing was there was disruption in supply chain, disruption in or changes in consumer behavior of how they shopped and so on and so forth. That resulted in organizations wanting to have resiliency in their business to change things out. And also that resulted in newer opportunities because of, again, consumer behaviors and enterprise priorities, and organizations needed agility to make those changes. So kind of cloud became that elastic element within an enterprise that they could leverage to address what the pandemic brought in. But I think the last 3 years has been organizations getting to cloud, getting a taste of it, accelerating adoption in cloud. But I think we are moving to a phase where the role of cloud is going to be beyond just providing a better infrastructure, better, newer IT services to providing more value. And that value is about utilizing the full power of cloud to consume services that's available through the democratized ecosystem. It's about unlocking the potential of trapped functional siloed data within your enterprise to create cross-functional intelligence. And it's also about creating new business models. So the research that we just recently did, across 800 companies, 12 industries, 14 countries, broad-based, pointed out to the fact that more than 80% of the companies are actually increasing their cloud investments. They are taking more and more capabilities to the cloud. So it's happening there, but there's also that shift that's happening from just getting to cloud to looking at what more value can I get out of cloud, and looking at cloud more as a continuum of capabilities from public to edge and more as an operating system. So that's why we believe it's going to be an exciting year 2023, where there will be a mindset shift from just using cloud and having a share of cloud to taking advantage of the power of cloud to reinvent your business. So that's kind of the change that we are seeing.
Yeah, no doubt the companies are feeling a lot of pressure to make the most of their cloud. Uh, Ashley, your view that 2023 is the year of cloud value, and what does this mean for managers?
So, and I know we're going to get into some of the ideas around practices and how to maximize cloud, but just to build on Karthik's point for a second, in that research, 42% of the companies felt like they had achieved their cloud outcomes. And while that's only up 5%, that is still really low. So you have this dichotomy of adoption curve way up, but outcome and kind of satisfaction with outcomes down. So I think that's what we really want to drill into when we start thinking about practices that we can use. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit later. But to me, the fundamental thing that's happening with this inflection point is what we kind of see or calling the double bubble. So at the same time, the cloud costs are rising, and then the next couple of years will outpace non-cloud technology spend. Organizations are feeling that double bubble. They've got increased the spigots on consumption-based cloud spend, but they still have a good portion of their estate that's sitting in the legacy. And so what our clients sometimes feel is that they're stuck in the middle. So when we think about this phase, while it is the year of value, there are some tough barriers that I know we'll talk about, but you're tackling both the double bubble, how to get more value out of the cloud spend and actually do the workout on the non-cloud spend.
Mm-hmm. And the figure, remind me, was it 45% of the companies that are fully happy with
42% feel that they have fully achieved their cloud outcomes. Now, there's positive on that in terms of looking at some of the dimensions like around it accelerating the business, being more flexible. I think on the cost topic, and we'll talk about that later, that's where it's the most elusive of the outcomes is around cost.
All right, let's look at barriers. What do you see as the key barriers facing companies as they work on capitalizing cloud value? And I think there's obviously more than one. Karthik, your sense of this?
Yeah, again, like any typical enterprise transformation has, roadblocks, challenges, and barriers. And a cloud-based transformation is pretty complex, all-encompassing, enterprise-wide, is very deeply technical. So the role of the CIO organization is in the epicenter of driving this transformation. But cloud also has a huge amount of business implication that you could transform your business, come up with new business models, new revenue streams, new ways you engage with your customers, partners, and so on and so forth. So when you look at all of these stuff, organizations are supposed to have challenges that they need to overcome. The interesting fact is that we see a consistent set of challenges in the last 2 years that's kind of continuing, even in this recent research that we did, and that's why we call these barriers seem to be stubborn, across the last few years. And these are, the top two are security and compliance risk being the top one, and the complexity of business and operational change within that enterprise being the second biggest, and 41% of the respondents feel that these are their top two. We want to call out that the security and compliance in the cloud is not any less sophisticated compared to your pre-cloud environment. In fact, it's a lot more sophisticated in the cloud environment. But you are now dealing with, not just a small footprint that you need to protect, which was your past data center, which was a finite set of real estate and finite set of servers. Now you're operating on the continuum from a multi-cloud, a multi-public cloud environment to a private cloud, a co-location environment, and edge locations. And you need to protect your infrastructure, applications, data across all of this stuff, which means that you need to re-architect your security posture, and you need to be able to create common standards that your entire organization is able to use. Remember, one of the biggest advantage of a cloud-based architecture is that it provides agility and flexibility for everybody to co-innovate and reinvent themselves. That means that everyone has the ability to create security vulnerability unless you create a consistent posture. So this requires new kind of work, and that always provides, creates some amount of nervousness. The second one is about the business and operational change. Like I talked about before, the true value of cloud can be accomplished only when it's a C-suite agenda and every part of the business is not just using technology like a tool to execute their business strategy. That was the past, and that's how technology was looked upon, as a tool to execute your business strategy. The future, where technology is becoming a secular megatrend and cloud becoming the biggest technology element there, you need to look at where that cloud technology is going and what's the potential of it, and marry it to how do you take advantage of that to come up with newer business opportunities and newer ways of delivering value to your stakeholders. And for that, it's an organization-wide change, and enterprises need to tackle that. So it takes time and it takes effort and it takes buy-in from everybody. So those are the top two things. And the third one is always about, your legacy sprawl or the legacy application modernization. You built your applications, your systems over decades. Now you need to go and relook at it to see how do you need to, fundamentally re-architect it and take it to cloud. So that kind of is the third barrier. I would say organizations should not be discouraged by these barriers, because this is your opportunity for you to clean this up and set your organization with the digital core that is required for your organization to transform, be more agile, and be able to face all the challenges that the world has seen. It's not just one pandemic that hit us in the last 2 years. Europe or the world is going through a full-fledged war that nobody anticipated, and we're going through an unprecedented level of economic situation across the world with inflation and recessionary pressure. So one needs to be ready for what comes next, and these are changes that cloud is coming as the avenue through which you are going to go and make these changes.
I think among the various barriers, the one that it seems really concerning to me is the idea of compliance and security. Ashley, tell me the security and compliance are not really a big issue. Companies shouldn't even worry about it. And or what's your take on how companies can work on capitalizing cloud value?
Well, there's a couple things. I think one is Karthik talked a lot about security, and that actually tops the list of the barriers at one. But as he said, there is proactive solutions around that. So while it should be top of mind, it's solvable. The one that I wanted to kind of iterate on, and it makes the top list again and again, and there's not a client we talk to that it doesn't come up, is around the softer side. So you heard Karthik talk about technology complexity, security, sprawl. There is a path through that. The harder part is the concerns around how do we get the business all on board and aligned, the skills that are related. A lot of our clients say it is hardest to shift our culture. So the growth mindset, the talent upskilling, being ready to adopt agile is also one of the barriers. And I remember one of our clients said to us, for us, our exam question is speed. And if we can solve for speed, value will come, cloud adoption will come, so that to them was their kind of like moniker for that around barriers. And I know we're going to talk about a number of different practices, but I did want to note that the people and human side of the barriers are as significant, if not more, than some of the technology-oriented barriers.
I hear that the idea of the skills gap again and again. It seems like the skills gap is only getting worse, but you're also talking about almost like a company culture issue where companies are still and after all these years continuing kind of to turn the ship so it's really oriented towards cloud. Am I hearing you correctly there?
Yes, and the skills gap is real, and the war for talent is real. And every organization has that as one of the top corporate imperatives. I think the key is if you invest a lot of money to acquire these new skills and bring them in, but your culture is not supportive of it, you are throwing good money after bad. So ultimately, you've got to build up that culture to be able to adopt and embrace the new mindset coming in, but also upskilling those that you have. There is not a talent pool out there that's enough. So organizations have to invest to build these AI and data skills in their own kind of core base, as well as agile skills. So I think to us, culture is as important as upskilling, because it's the thing that allows the upskilling to take root over time.
All right, so there are all these harried companies out there. They're wanting advice. What should we do? We're confused. Karthik, what's your best advice to companies as they seek to maximize their cloud deployment?
I think, broadly, organizations need to look at cloud not just as a destination, but as a journey and an operating model, which means that you are creating an infrastructure that's always evolving. You're creating an IT infrastructure, and I use infrastructure with a big I as a technology resource across the organization that is configurable, consumable, and automatable, with which you could do bigger things. But there are certain practices that organizations can adopt that kind of accelerates their value from cloud. And probably Ashley, you could touch a few of those practices.
Yeah, and we focused heavily on the practices because what we saw in the outcomes research is year over year, there is not enough change and what is behind that. So we really focused on 5 practices, and that's really the core of what we think organizations need to focus on. They don't need to mature in every single one at the same time, but some element of these 5 things should be in your cloud programs. And the first 2 really revolve around, it's Karthik, you said it, which is reshifting and reframing this to be about using cloud data and AI to pursue industry advantage, to reinvent your business model, to change your culture. This is measuring it less by how much have I migrated and more about, did I drive a new revenue stream? Are our products sticky in the market? Have we created a new experience? Do all of our managers have data at their finger points? That to me is the shift. And there's practical ways organizations do this. They are targeting high value use cases. So for example, if you are doing research and development in a life sciences company, your outcome should be, how do we increase productivity by 50%? That's a big outcome that everybody can wrap their arms around. And when you start talking about it like this, it's a board level topic. We've seen some of our clients put on a technology committee on their board just to help make it through kind of this, transformational shift. I think the third area, and Karthik, you talked about this, which is taking a more architectural approach versus somebody going, well, which cloud provider am I going to use? This is a series of decisions, whether it be cloud, whether it be private, public, whether it be edge, like you said. How are you thinking about AI? Your end goal is the digital core of the company. Your end goal is not to migrate workloads to a cloud provider. So that to me is that architectural approach. And it's really looking at your tech stack as it's a corporate strategic element, imperative. I think the fourth element we talked about, which is this whole investment in the human systems right alongside the technology systems. And we did do research around that, and it does improve outcomes by 60%. And what I like about those outcomes are some of it's around collaboration, better collaboration, cross-functional, speed, more innovation. Like the investment in the human systems with the tech systems is paramount. There's a lot in there that we could go, but that's kind of the net takeaway. And finally, around the topic that we call mastering cloud economics, this being the thorniest issue, there's a couple of things. One is the exam question is not, how do I reduce my cloud costs? It's how do I shift my mix? A lot of organizations have still 50 to 70% of their spend, technology spend, is keeping the lights on. That
Mm.
is too much towards indiscretionary, non-value added. So it's shifting the mix. I think practically speaking, a lot of our clients have realized we don't even know what this topic of cloud FinOps is, and we need to build this capability. So getting better financial discipline practices, processes around consumption-based cloud spend is what our clients are focused on. And then finally, in that, the CFOs are starting to lean in and say, you know, we used to think about this annually or multi-years in long-range planning, but if we're going to fund in a more product digital fashion, that needs to be more iterative and agile. And so our clients are starting to really shift how they think about investments and technology as a whole.
You know, there's one piece I definitely would echo. You talked about the idea of an architectural approach, which I'm going to shift that perhaps. Maybe it's the same idea. Companies maybe have not planned properly. Maybe we're saying the same idea. There's the cloud, they rushed to it, especially during the pandemic, and now they're deployed, and it's like, wait, have we planned this? Are you really saying planning is where it's at?
Yes, planning is where it's at. That is a part of it. And that's taking the programmatic approach, but taking an architectural approach is a little bit different. You have to have the map. You can't have the complete picture, but just introducing technologies, there could be such a thing as cloud sprawl, you know, so we don't want legacy sprawl to be replaced by cloud sprawl. And the way you do that is thinking deliberately around your architecture. It's a little bit different than planning, but the concept that you know the map, the blueprint for where you're going, we think is key.
Interesting. Well, I think everyone wants to know, you know, where we are going with cloud. So I would ask the two of you to look into your crystal ball. Your predictions for the future of enterprise cloud and AI, if that works into your prediction. Clearly, these technologies have a powerful symbiotic value that will revolutionize enterprise tech. Karthik, your view?
I think we are, first of all, fortunate to be living, working, you know, watching in close corners all this revolution that's happening around us.
Right.
The amount of transformation that's happening with the Global 2000 and other companies is unprecedented. And the good news is that technology is being the single secular trend. It's both causing some of the disruptions, and it's also the answer to a lot of these disruptions. So we genuinely believe that cloud, data, and AI as core capabilities are going to play a fundamental role in organizations looking at it. Clearly, you know, unlocking the legacy data that is trapped in functional silos across an enterprise through the power of cloud is a low-hanging fruit. Organizations immediately can get cross-functional enterprise-wide intelligence and get a different view of what the market is saying, what customers want, and how to interact with them. How do you build the next new product, which has a higher probability of success? All of that could be decided and determined by using the power of cloud, data, and AI. There's also the promise of metaverse. And when people think metaverse, immediately the thought comes about, you know, gaming and consumer metaverse. We are seeing a lot more merit and a lot more adoption that's going to happen in the industrial metaverse, whether it's about planning your future factories and your you know, delivery systems, supply chains, and so on and so forth. And metaverse is going to operate with huge amount of data sets. And the only way you bring experience and personalization on that is by applying AI in the cloud. So we are thinking that, you know, every organization is going to have something called a digital core, which is going to be their configurable, consumable, you know, automatable infrastructure with a big I. And that is going to operate on a cloud continuum from public to edge and everything in between. So that's going to be a de facto strategy. There's going to be composable architecture of how organizations build their IT backbone and their systems and so on and so forth. And that's all going to be connected through cloud-based integrations, because you are not going to have all of this in limited space. It's going to be spread. There's going to be a transformation of the network that needs to happen. 5G is going to play a bigger role because not everything is going to get connected through a fiber optic cable. There's going to be a lot of last mile that's going to happen through 5G and edge and so on and so forth. And AI is going to start playing a role that's going to be more mainstream, where foundational AI models will kind of increase the intelligence quotient of an entire enterprise. So in summary, we believe that there is a direct proportionality between the cloud data and AI maturity of an enterprise to the digital maturity of that enterprise, or the digital readiness of that enterprise in the future. So it's an exciting future, and I think cloud data and AI are going to play central theme in every enterprise's future.
Clearly, I think it must be true. Ashley, your take, if you look into your crystal ball, we have the same conversation a few years down the road. What are we going to be talking about when we talk about enterprise cloud and or AI?
Yeah, and I don't want to repeat what Karthik said, but the idea that this cloud data and AI index, so if you take that as the digital core, I think some of the things that I would add that wrap around it is I do think that organizations are going to be on the offense around cloud. And I think there's a couple things there from a strategic outcomes perspective that we talked about. People are not going to be talking about the cloud data AI index. They're going to be talking about how their business is run entirely differently. So this notion around these outcomes that are there, I think the one we haven't talked about is sustainability. Cloud is often it's a lever in an organization's sustainability agenda. So I think these things that matter to the board and matter to the company's growth is going to be how they're talking about what they got out of their cloud investments. I think the second thing around there is the wraparound that we talked about the people. These organizations are going to feel differently. They are going to learn differently. They're going to have different skill sets, different ways of working. So for that index that Karthik talked about, it's how are people going to be working? What does it feel like? People that never would have thought that they know how to use AI, everybody's going to be using AI.
Right,
so
right.
I think that surround sound around the people and the culture dimension, if we fast forward a year from now, it needs to look and feel differently. And then the final thing, and we talked about it, which is the double bubble, sustainable cost transformation. Like a lot of times we get into the situation and we have to cut costs, but it's not sustainable. The minute, the environment changes, the costs come back. So this idea that we're shifting to a consumption-based technology model is going to radically change how you think about investments and how you do that. So I think I would put that in the crystal ball too. And I'm sure CFOs want to see that as well.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. It's almost ironic. You're talking about the cultural element and the human element. I mean, sometimes we think, well, AI is going to run everything. We humans just going to sit back and be obsolete. But in fact, and I hear this across the industry, humans are actually more important than ever before, and we need more of them. And the skills gap is very real. So I think I think what you're saying is really spot on in terms of what I've heard. At any rate, Ashley, Karthik, thank you so much for sharing your insight today. I learned a ton. Come back and talk with us again sometime, hopefully.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity, James.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.